Welcome to Holistic Health with Melissa, a podcast for women who are ready to stop living in survival mode and start truly healing. I'm Melissa, a holistic trauma and anxiety coach, and here we talk about all things holistic healing for trauma, anxiety, and the nervous system. We blend science, scripture, and somatic work to help you regulate your body, renew your mind, and reconnect with the peace God designed for you to live in. If you're craving real healing, freedom from symptoms, and joy that reaches your mind, body, and spirit, you're in the right place. I was debilitated by the anxiety. And that is my life's calling now, is to help women see those connections and understand what's happening inside of them. So Gabor Mate, I've talked about this before. He says trauma is not the event, it's what happens inside of you as a result of that event. Hi, friend. Do you feel like you've done all the things? You've tried the therapy, the pills, the diets, and nothing seems to work? You have a great life, but something is still missing. You don't feel energized, alive, or free, but you know that you are called for something more. Then I want you to join me for the 3-day Mind Body Healing Workshop, where we'll blend science, scripture, and somatic work to heal your mind, body, and spirit for real this time. You'll step into whole body restoration, finding joy, freedom from symptoms, and freedom from the chains of trauma that have been holding you back. I cannot wait to see you there. Go to holistichealthbymelissa.com to sign up. Your life will never be the same. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Holistic Health with Melissa. This is kind of a deep topic. I tend to start the solo episodes this way, don't I? I'm solo today, and on the date of recording, this is a few days before the anniversary of the school shooting. So I'm going to be talking in detail, sharing kind of what my experience was and what happened then and in the subsequent, weeks, months, and years after that. So this is a trigger warning. This is going to be a deep issue. It's not for little ears. This is a little bit of a different episode. It's really personal. It's really heavy, but I really believe that it is important for fully understanding like what trauma is and how it can impact you. And really my hope is that you can find some pearls of wisdom and learn something about yourself in my story so that you can shift your own life. So as of the time of this recording, next Thursday is March 5th, and that marks 25 years since the school shooting at my high school. And that day changed my life forever. I want to share a bit about like my own story and what I've learned about trauma and healing, and some tools that you can use in your own life to help you feel safer and stronger and more whole. Okay, so without further ado, I want to go back to that day, March 5th, 2001. It started off like a day that was like any other day. There didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. It started like any other day, and I woke up and got ready for school. The way the high school was set up, I was a sophomore in high school, and freshmen and sophomores started on the later block, while juniors and seniors started in the earlier block. So school had already started for some students, but I didn't have to be there until I forget what the time it was, 9:25 or something like that. Um, but there had already been school in session. And when I walked onto the campus, there it was in between classes. So some students had already, had their first class and they were going to their next class, and then some students were just arriving. And that's when everything changed. And I walked onto the campus and I heard what at the time I thought was firecrackers in a trash can. And I'm not exactly sure why I thought that. I had never heard firecrackers or fireworks or anything. Like, I don't know exactly like what was going on through my head. I had never heard a gun. So it was not even close to what I thought was going on. And um, I quickly realized it in the way the school was set up. Um, I grew up, it was in San Diego, so a lot of the stuff outside is outside, and our school was no difference. The classrooms were inside, but there was no indoor like hallways. All the hallways were outside. And so there was a center part of the the school that we called the quad, the small quad. And there was also a large one, another area of the school, but the small quad was where I was walking into to go connect with my friends before class was going to start in a few minutes. And heard the loud noise, the popping noise, and I remember feeling fear because I wasn't sure where it was coming from. And I kind of was like searching, my eyes were like scanning, trying to figure out where the noise was coming from. And as I was scanning, I realized that people were starting to run. And then we started hearing screaming, and everybody was just running away from the center of the school, the center of that quad. And so I did the same thing. I ran away, and I ran to my first class, which was right on, not very far from where I was standing. It was kind of right on the perimeter of that area. I ran into the classroom, and a couple other people ran in at the same time, and we immediately started to barricade the door. And nobody really knew what was going on. This was back in 2001. Social media really wasn't a thing. It wasn't the year before that in 2000, or actually, I guess it was 2 years before that. I think Columbine had happened. I think it was 1999, April 1999. So there had been, some news on things like this happening, but in the moment, I had no idea what was going on. But I just remember being so scared. Like I remember thinking, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. And yeah, it's easier to talk about now, but for a lot of years, like whenever I would even talk about it, it would bring up the same physical feelings inside of my body. And I want to talk a little bit about that, about how the memories or the images, your brain doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie, or the truth and make believe, right? If you imagine something happening so many times, it actually is the same physical feeling inside of your body as if it's really happening. So for years after the shooting, I actually had like flashbacks, and I would very much go into this fight or flight where my system was on high alert on this scanning for danger, because I was reliving the story inside of my body. I was reliving it in my mind, but I was also reliving it in my body. Um, so we barricaded ourselves in there for a little while. There was one of the kids who had been shot, wound up in that room with us. And he was bleeding a lot. I had never seen that level of blood. I had never seen somebody be shot. It was very traumatizing. There was teachers tending to him, but we just huddled in the corner and just waited. And we didn't have cell phones at the time, so there was no communication. And then after a period of time, and in my memory, it feels like it was hours, but I don't think it was that long. Um, we were evacuated from that room. And at the time, we were told, it was the police that came to the door. And at the time, they were still trying to figure out what was going on within, the school. They didn't know who was the shooter, what was, did he act alone? Like where, they were still trying to piece it all together. So they told us as we were walking out, um, to walk out with our hands up. So we all single file walked out with our hands up while the police were standing there with their, firearms aimed at us, escorting us out of the school and off the campus. And across the street was a small grocery store. We went to that small grocery store, and they kind of just left us all there in the grocery store parking lot to wait for our parents. And I somehow, there was, I think another parent or a teacher maybe had a cell phone. I called my mom and told her something happened. Come get me. And she came to get me. And when she came, she had a cell phone, and I can't really remember exactly how, but I wound up on the phone with a friend of mine who did not go to the same school. She was a year above me, but went to a different school. And when I wound up on the cell phone with her, still in the parking lot of the grocery store, she told me, Melissa, it was Andy. And I said, what? Andy died? No, Melissa, it was Andy. He's the shooter. And I think the blood must have all ran out of my face and my whole body at that time. I feel like that moment is just seared into my brain. That was the moment that I learned that the shooter, Andy Williams, was a friend of mine. He was actually at my house the night before on March 4th, the evening of March 4th. He was at my house, and I was shocked. I had absolutely no idea. And I was instantly overcome with a horrendous amount of guilt and shame and questions. And for many years after that, I blamed myself for not being able to predict that he was going to shoot people. And in that, in those memories, like I remember the sirens, I remember the police holding their guns at us, I remember being evacuated, I remember the confusion and the screams, the cries, the overwhelming fear inside of my body. I remember the uncertainty of like whether or not I was going to survive, or if I was safe, if other people were safe, like what was going on. The fear and like that sense of danger, that looming danger, that followed me for many, many years. Close to, definitely well into my 20s. I felt like I lived in that state. And I remember, ultimately I was okay. My family was okay. 2 boys lost their lives that day, and I think 13 others were injured.
The shooter was captured. He acted alone. He's still in prison. He did try to contact me a few times after that because we were friends. And I wanted nothing to do with him. I was a kid myself. Um, I struggle to talk about this part because I do have some sympathy for him. He did some horrendous things, and those are, you know, absolutely horrendous, like mind-boggling. I struggle to forgive him. I'm sure that, the people who lost their families and there's lots of people who struggle to forgive him. But I also know some personal information about him. I knew him on a personal level. He was 14. He lived alone with his father, who I never met, but from all stories that Andy ever told, like, was not a nice guy. And I don't think that he ever had love or safety in his own home. He never felt cared for. His mom abandoned him when he was 3 years old, and that doesn't excuse any of what he did, but it really does help understand kind of the landscape in which something like that can happen. It was a perfect storm of really, really horrible things. And yeah, I lived there and I developed, as a result of that traumatic experience, I developed extreme anxiety and depression and hypervigilance and panic and insomnia. Anytime I closed my eyes for years after that, I would have flashbacks. I would see the images of the shooting. And my mind sort of since then even has tried to understand it in different ways. And I've actually, like, my mind, and sometimes I'll even still have some weird dreams where my brain is trying to superimpose that experience over other experiences and just kind of trying to make sense of the whole thing. Just a few months ago, I had a dream that we had a neighborhood kid shot our bedroom window with a BB gun, and um we filed a police report and everything, and nobody got hurt, but it obviously was a very bad choice. But that night I had a dream that the shooting happened at my school, but I was inside of my house. And so it kind of like replayed the whole shooting, but I was like inside of my house, if that makes sense. It was very bizarre. Um, and that was my brain really trying to make sense of what had happened that day, and then also, like, superimposing my experience at Santana at the school. So for years, I really struggled with that hypervigilance, and loud noises would make me jump, and I was debilitated by the anxiety. And that is my life's calling now, is to help women see those connections and understand what's happening inside of them. So Gabor Mate, I've talked about this before. He says trauma is not the event, it's what happens inside of you as a result of that event. So in that event, I felt extremely unsafe. I felt like my own survival was in jeopardy. And so I developed this anxiety, this hypervigilance. If I can scan the environment and I can sense danger, I can stay safe, right? Because even if I sense danger, even if I can't do anything about it, it's more comfortable for my nervous system to recognize it as as a threat, to predict it, than it is to live in uncertainty or not knowing. So your brain is always trying to scan. And like, this wasn't just my experience, like, or my story. There was so many lives that were affected that day, and the trauma from that day and other experiences like this, like ripples out far and wide. And I had another podcast even sharing like how that experience has shaped my response to other, news stories of shootings and how my body physically responds. And remembering that trauma, it impacts the nervous system. It keeps our nervous system in a state of alert. And that can show up emotionally, physically, and spiritually because it makes our bodies tense up. It makes our minds really anxious and scanning for the next danger. It obviously creates heaviness in our heart, can make us feel unsafe like years and decades later. And that's that physical feeling that's showing up in your body, even though the danger is already gone, right? And that's how they say like trauma gets stored inside of your body. That's what happens is you have this really emotional experience, this really emotional event. Remember, trauma is not the event. It's what happens inside of you as a result of that event. You have this really emotional event that we store that emotion, that energy in motion inside of our body. And healing doesn't mean that we're going to like forget about that or like not remember. Like I remember the details of the shooting. It means retraining our nervous system to feel safe and whole again, to rewire your nervous system for safety so it can recognize that, oh, that is a memory of a past experience and I am safe. So, the best, trauma, one of the other things that trauma does is it separates it makes us feel really alone, and it really changes our identity and who we think we are. For a lot of years, I carried the identity as responsible for that shooting, even though I had nothing to do with it. And I believed that. But it also disconnects our mind from our body, and we start living just in our mind, and we're pretty much unaware of anything that's happening from the neck down. So one of the ways that I help my clients with processing through this grief is through somatic work. Soma is the Greek word for body, and somatic work is really just the connection between the mind and the body. And we have to work to reestablish that connection between the mind and the body so that you can actually feel physically safe. Like you can know you're safe, but unless you actually physically feel that you're safe, knowing it is not going to really help all that much because your body always keeps the score. So through somatic work, is one of the things that I help my clients with. And the bridge between the mind and the body is the breath. And so that's what I work with women, with people on, is really learning to reconnect to their body so that they can feel safe again, so that their nervous system can rewire in combination with doing the deep identity and heart work, like who am I truly? Realigning and rooting your identity in truth, the truth of who Christ says you are. Because this identity that we take on, that we carry, is an identity that's not even true. And so how do we get rid of that identity and root our identity in truth, rewire our nervous system, and bring safety back to the body so that we can restore the calling on our life? That is my life's mission. So with that, I feel like that's enough heaviness for the day. With that, I just want to invite you for a moment to just connect to your body And I'm just going to invite you to place one hand over your heart. And if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, please do that. And I want you to just notice what you feel inside of your body. We're not trying to fix anything or change anything, or there's nowhere else for us to be. We're just noticing what is. For me, talking about this has got me a little bit, I feel kind of activated. I feel some movement inside of my body. Feels very charged, very activated. I feel it in my stomach and my chest. And so I'm just gonna gently it makes so much sense, right? Makes so much sense that I feel that way, reliving this experience that I had. It's a very traumatic experience 25 years ago. And I'm just going to invite myself and invite you to take a deep breath into the belly. And again. See if you can't just bring that breath really deep down into your belly. When we're in that fight or flight, we tend to breathe much more in our chest, much more shallow. See if you can't bring that breath deep into your belly. Really let that belly rise and fall with each breath. Keep going, just focusing on your breath. Minding your nervous system. We're sending signals to your nervous system that you are safe. I'm starting to notice a decreased sense of activation. I feel a lot more aligned, more grounded. I don't feel as activated. I'm definitely calming down. I even feel a little less tight and tense in my shoulders. Go ahead and take another deep breath into your belly. When you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes. This is my life's work, is to help women, children, families to reclaim their safety, their health, their peace in their bodies and their soul. So ask yourself, where is my nervous system showing up in fight or flight? Where is my nervous system trying to protect me? Awareness is always the first step. If you can recognize where that is, that's when you have the agency to change it. When you can recognize where it is, I invite you to just connect to your body. No judgment, no shame, no condemnation. Holding yourself in love and compassion and gentleness, being with yourself in those feelings, just allowing them to exist with compassion and gentleness. And that stillness is going to allow you to connect with God, and it's going to bring peace beyond all understanding. You will start to root your identity in truth, rewire your nervous system, and bring safety back to your body so you can restore your life. It's on days like this. This episode will come out on the 25th anniversary of the shooting, and it's on days like this that I remember the fragility of life and the resilience that we all carry. Healing is not a destination, it's a journey. And if you can take one step forward today, you can reclaim your body, your mind, and your heart, because healing is always possible. I love you, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Holistic Health with Melissa. It is such an honor to have you here. If you found value in today's episode, would you share it with a friend who might need it too and leave us a review? If you have questions or topic suggestions, reach out on social media or visit our website, holistichealthbymelissa.com, and take care. I'll catch you on the next episode.